A leading economic research institute says the impact of the carbon tax on most families will be less than expected. The University of Canberra's NatSem Institute says it's using more accurate and up-to-date information than what Treasury used. The numbers come ahead of this week's June quarter inflation data, the last before the carbon tax. Here's finance correspondent Philip Lasker.
When Louis Maraza tells you he's being squeezed by higher living costs, you can believe it. He's tracked expenses for 20 years and the last 5 have been very painful.
My utilities increased by 35%, which is massive.
And his family is dreading the carbon tax impact on energy costs.
In my case, it will escalate it a lot further.
But Canberra's National Centre for Economic Modelling says the impact will be less than expected. The centre now has more up-to-date information than Treasury and hard numbers from energy regulators. While Treasury said the impact would be $9.90 a week, NatSem says it'll be $8.80.
So that suggests that more households will be fully compensated and in fact overcompensated than initially expected.
It's an impact that won't be part of this week's inflation data collected by the small army of people who monitor hundreds of prices across Australia. But the June quarter CPI will at least be easier to interpret.
Once the carbon tax effects start coming through in the data, that's going to make it a lot harder to differentiate between genuine underlying inflation and price increases due to the carbon tax.
But with inflation falling and the cost of living rising, households don't see it as reflecting reality.
Their individual inflation experience may be a little different from the CPI, but I think that it is a very good measure of inflation in general.
Over time, the CPI weighting does reflect reality. More than 60% of household spending goes towards food, housing, recreation and transport. Over 8 years, 3 of the big 4 categories have swallowed up more of our income, but relatively cheaper cars have seen transport costs shrink. Smaller categories like health, education and utilities are costing us more, but clothing and other non-essentials have flattened out or even shrunk. As always, though, priorities determine where the money will be spent.
I show you a room in this house where the furniture is very, very badly deteriorated, but I'm not replacing it.
Louis Maraza would rather turn on his heater instead. Philip Lasker, ABC News.